Hey guys, Gary Peterson here, and today we're talking about the transport pump. So the system that we're going to be reviewing today is going to be the Alaris MedSystem 3. Just talk about that one real quick. The biggest con for this one, the only couple things that I don't like about it, and that's going to be the fact that it has a completely self-contained battery. And that way, if you're on a transport, you're in an environment in which suddenly it starts yelling at you that it's a low battery situation, you don't have a battery that you can click out and click back in and keep rolling with it. The good news is the battery will run for hours with the particular battery that they supply it with. It also has an AC port. So, as I tell my crews, if you're going to do any transport that exceeds 60 minutes, you need to make sure that you have the AC adapter with you, and that way you can go ahead and plug it in. And some of my medics are just in the habit of every single time they get back into the unit, they just immediately plug it in. It's one less thing to worry about, especially if you got an extra set of hands. The clamp built into it is a nice feature. I've also seen a feature that there's a piece on the back for flight crews to just click it onto the side of the med module on the fuselage. The size is pretty small considering the fact that you get 1, 2, 3 drip chambers at the same time, three meds running. If you get a super complex patient, we have a second pump that's identical to this one, so we can run 6 drips concurrent. You can also run blood products through this as well. So that's a nice feature. It tends to be really tricky as far as it can get really irritated with you for having bubbles in the line, but we're going to talk about that right now. So the standard setup is going to be, your normal bag, your normal line. This one's actually proprietary. Specifically, it says MedSystem 3. And, one of the differences, I give credit where credit's due to the people who've trained me for flight medicine, is air bubbles are bad, so we get rid of all air bubbles. If you would normally take this bag and spike it, you'd have a good 20 cc's of air in the top. That's pretty normal. I mean, I did that for years and years on the ground medic unit, and normally there's no issue with that. You're hanging it, or you're having somebody else hold it, and you got it all upwards. In fact, the point is, you're supposed to have your drip chamber and only roughly halfway full. Usually there's a guideline on there. You'll notice this actually is full of fluid, and there's no discernible bubbles in there. I actually want that full. I want that full for me. Now, you can do this completely set up with 20 cc's of air in the top. You can have your drip chamber halfway full so that you can still confirm that you've got drips coming down, that kind of thing. But that's not how you're managing this system. You're managing this system with the pump. So you might as well trust your equipment that you set it up right. And if you have to go back to gravity feed, you can go back to gravity feed. It's not irreversible. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our drips just like normal, unpackage, we're going to spike in, we're going to immediately withdraw our spike, and then squeeze our air out until it's flowing over the tip, and then spike it back in. So that gets us, our air is gone out of here. Some people can take a needle and aspirate, basically pull it out. You can do that. The other thing is you can spike it in like normal. You'll have air. You invert the bag, and you immediately start squeezing on the bag to push the air up into the drip chamber, and then just like you would do this, how you've ever overfilled your drip chamber and you hold the bag and you give it a couple squeezes to add more air into the drip chamber. Exact same thing, except in reverse. You're doing it upside down, so that as you squeeze this, it actually keeps forcing the air up and down the line and filling the entire system, so you have a completely airless system. Now that's doing a couple things for us. Number one, still going to go ahead and hang our bag, whenever possible. And ideally, we want to, we're going to have to go ahead and flood our line to protect the patient from air embolus. But at the same time, we're also completely flooding the line to get rid of any tiny little bubbles that's going to irritate the hell out of this little machine right here. It's extremely sensitive. I mean, it's designed to be that way as a safety mechanism so that you don't end up with an air embolus. But either way, you could end up with, it's going to keep yelling at you the more air bubbles it faces. So this line is pretty standard. This is the standard line. We're going to talk about the secondary line in the next video. But for this one, you've got a standard drip chamber. You've got an upper med port. you've got your drip wheel, you've got a lower med port, and then finally you've got the end which connects into your patient. So all this is pretty standard except for this little guy right here. So this cartridge, bring it close, this is obviously what's going to fit inside your IV pump. And you'll notice right here, this guy right here, this little bubble right here. And you can even see, if you get really close, you can see there's an air bubble inside the center of that thing. So actually I'm going to open up the line. And while I've got the line open, I actually want to tap on that so that, and I'm tapping on it, letting it flow through. And ideally I want to get it to a point where there is no air bubble at all in there, and then I'm good to go and I shut it down. Okay, I'm going to shut it down by the wheel, or the other way you can shut it down is when you pull on this, it's got this guy right here, so when I pull on it, it's going to clamp my line. Okay, that's great too. So right now I've got only a tiny little air bubble. The machine's usually pretty happy with that. So I can't forget the fact that I've got the lower wheel on too. I don't want to connect in my line into the pump, try to start flowing, and then immediately be given an occlusion alarm simply because I forgot this wheel. So I can go ahead and open up this wheel now, so it's free on the line because the clamp is in place. And the clamp has to be in place on there, not an open line, a closed line. For two reasons. One, you don't want to just free flow, assuming this is medication here. This isn't just saline, you know, we're actually infusing a medication. So now for demonstration purposes, this is just saline. But you don't want to have a bag of like 250 cc's of something and flood it all out before you even get to your setup. So that brings us to actually going ahead and putting it in. So the very first thing is you got to figure out how to put this onto the cartridge correctly. All right. So it doesn't just go straight in. That doesn't work. It actually goes in. It actually goes in at an angle. It kind of goes like this into. So the best way to push, you can't push on this yet because that's part of the locking mechanism. And then this flange right here is going to seat right here underneath. Okay. So we can pick any of them. So we'll just go like this. So we got it. We got it on an angle. Actually, I'm going to bring it into the side like this so you can kind of see a little bit better. So we're going to come in low. And it's got two forks here. We can't go above the forks. There's just no space. But we're going to go in low. And then you can seat the flange. The flange is now seated under there. Okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to push on, of the cartridge, I could push on the white or I could push on the plastic fixed section of my cartridge. I'm going to take my thumb and I'll push on the cartridge. And then when it's completely seated in, then I'm going to